Good evening, this is India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this evening. First up, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri in Dhaka. Misri says that he's conveyed the minority safety concerns. The meeting takes place in the backdrop of rising tensions between India and Bangladesh over security of minority communities in Bangladesh. Political upheaval in Syria. 48 hours later, Kremlin says that they have given political asylum to Assad and his family. Bashar al-Assad, remember, gave power to the rebels who managed to reach Damascus in less than 14 days. Israel, meanwhile, enters the buffer zone in Golan Heights between Syria and Israeli territory. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is in Russia on a 3-day visit. The visit is aimed at deepening defence ties as India and Russia are set to sign a $4 billion radar system deal. A 20-year-old Indian origin man shot dead in Canada. Last week, the Indian student was stabbed to death in Ontario. This is the second such death in a week. An Israeli envoy, Ruin Azar, speaks to NDTV, says that Israel is not involved in Syrian conflict, says that Iran and its tentacles have been dismantled due to Israel's onslaught in both Gaza and Lebanon. All right, the big story that we are tracking right now is from Bangladesh, where Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is in Dhaka on a day-long visit. The visit comes after tensions have been rising between India and Bangladesh over rising concerns related to minority community, that is the Hindu community, not being given fair treatment. It is the first high-level visit from New Delhi after the student revolution took place on 5th of August, landing to a red carpet welcome on Monday morning. Misri was received by senior Bangladeshi foreign ministry official at the airport. Indian High Commissioner Pranay Verma was also present. Shortly after his arrival, Misri held talks with his Bangladeshi counterpart, that is Mohammad Jashim Uddin, amid strained bilateral ties between the two countries. Listen in to what Foreign Secretary had to say after that visit.
Today's discussions have given both of us the opportunity to take stock of our relations, and I appreciate the opportunity today to have had a frank, candid and constructive exchange of views with all my interlocutors. I emphasized that India desires a positive, constructive and mutually beneficial relationship with Bangladesh. We have always seen in the past, and we continue to see in the future, this relationship as a people-centric and people-oriented relationship.
All right. During these meetings, Foreign Secretary Misri highlighted India's support for a democratic, stable, peaceful, progressive and, most importantly, inclusive Bangladesh. Foreign Secretary also discussed certain developments that have taken place in the recent past, particularly Chinmay Krishna Das's case that has come up and also conveyed India's concerns, particularly those related to safety and welfare of minorities. Foreign Secretary raised regrettable incidents of attacks on cultural, religious and diplomatic properties. The two sides also exchanged views on sub-regional, regional and multilateral issues and agreed to enhance consultation and cooperation to advance regional integration. Misri is also scheduled to pay a courtesy visit to Bangladesh's interim government's chief advisor, Muhammad Yunus. The Indian Foreign Secretary's visit comes amidst tensions between New Delhi and Dhaka, which have in fact increased ever since Sheikh Hasina was ousted on the 5th of August. Meanwhile, another case has been lodged against Hindu religious leader Chinmay Krishna Das, who continues to be in jail. The new charges come following a clash between his followers and the police in the Chittagong court premises last week. Bangladeshi media reports indicate that the case names the Hindu leader as the prime accused, along with 164 identified individuals, and about 400 to 500 unidentified people. The complaint alleged that he was attacked by followers of Krishnadas, while the complainant said that he was attacked by followers of Krishnadas while returning home after completing land registry work on 26th of November. All right, let's get in my colleague Saurabh Gupta to fill us in with the very latest on this. Saurabh, appreciate you taking out the time to speak to us on India Global. The fact is that the relations between India and Bangladesh are very strained, and there's expectation that Vikram Misri's visit could probably bridge some of this tension, provided Bangladesh gives India's cause a just and an important hearing.
That's right. You know, the Foreign Secretary has obviously raised these issues of continuing attacks on minorities and specifically the targeting of ISKCON, which is known as a body that's, of course, also associated with the Hindu community in Bangladesh. There's a large number of temples. They've also come under attack. And this is something that obviously will be on the agenda. Chinmay Krishna Das, like you mentioned, a man who should at least have the right to present his side of his case in court. But, we've seen the open threats that's been given out to anyone who wants to defend him in court. And these are issues that are very basic, and these are things that will obviously be part of the talks, the ongoing situation in Bangladesh. But like the Foreign Secretary said, that there is much more at stake. A lot is at stake in the India-Bangladesh relationship, and that includes, railway connectivity, that includes internet transit, that includes a lot of, infrastructure, movement of goods, commerce across the border, usage of waterways. All of these things are part of the entire bilateral relationship. And what has happened in the last few days has really put a strain on that relationship. And when there is so much at stake, obviously what India expects is that the government of Bangladesh will do the basic of providing safety and security to minorities, letting Chinmay Krishnadas defend himself in court. And also in the past few days, we've seen some anti-India elements, largely radical elements in the country, taking center stage, issuing threats to the minority community. These are things that the law and order mechanism in Bangladesh needs to look into. Protect minorities, protect the Hindu community, and that's the concrete structure perhaps of those talks that Foreign Secretary Misri had in Bangladesh, but also across the border in neighboring West Bengal. Mamata Banerjee again has commented on the issue.
Yes. All right, Saurabh, really appreciate you taking out the time and connecting the dots for us there. Shifting focus now to the other big story that we are tracking, which is, the latest that has happened in Syria. It's unraveled in the last 48 hours dramatically. And after 15 years of a civil war, the final push to overthrow Syria's President Bashar al-Assad took less than 15 days. On 8th of December, rebel forces overran the capital, Damascus. Syrian rebels took Damascus and toppled Assad's regime in a lightning offensive, and that's set to reshape the Middle East. The overthrow ended the Assad family's 53-year rule, capped 13 years of brutal civil war. As government forces melted away, footage from Damascus showed rebel groups entering the presidential palace, escorting the prime minister from his home in a sign of the formal transition of power and freeing bewildered Syrian prisoners who had been jailed under Assad's rule. The fallen president has fled to Moscow, and he's set to be given asylum there along with his family, the Russian media reported. While Syrians around the world rejoiced. Meanwhile, the European High Representative for Foreign Affairs has said the end of Syrian president's rule is a positive and long-awaited development. It also shows the weakness of Assad's backers, that is Russia and Iran. But who is fighting whom in Syria and why? Why are so many foreign governments, from the US to Russia to Iran to Turkey, involved? How did Assad's regime survive for so long, and what happens now that he's gone? What is India's attitude towards Assad? And there are millions such questions that remain unanswered. It is too early to say if Assad's fall is the end of the Syrian civil war or just another chapter. But this report brings you up to speed with how things stand right now.
In less than 2 weeks, Syria's history has been altered. President Bashar al-Assad whose brutal regime killed tens of thousands and displaced over 7 million internally, has fled to Russia after opposition forces romped to Damascus at a lightning pace. Assad's ouster has brought in much-needed relief to people who spent their lifetime under the nose of the decades-long family regime. The reactions echoed across the globe as thousands of Syrians celebrated the fall of Assad, singing and waving flags. They chanted slogans against the ousted Syrian president and his father, Hafez.
It's like tears of happiness like today. It's like we didn't imagine. I lost my family. I lost my father, mother, brother. I lost many of my friends in Syria for this day. I wanted to celebrate this day in Syria today.
Meanwhile, world leaders have mostly hailed Assad's ouster, but stopped short of celebrating as they seek stability in the war-torn nation. US President Joe Biden has said that it's a historic opportunity, but also termed it a moment of risk and uncertainty. On the other hand, India has called for a peaceful and inclusive Syrian-led political process to bring stability to that country. Meanwhile, US President-elect Donald Trump has urged the outgoing US administration to stay out of the Syria conflict. According to reports, the US is trying to work out what comes next and who rules over Syria. Washington is worried that the power vacuum could be filled by something that is not desirable, a power grab by Islamist insurgents, including factions designated as terrorists by the US. The end of the Assad family's 5-decade rule is set to reshape the balance of power in the region. Iran, one of Assad's biggest backers, has suffered another significant blow to its influence in the region. There are big questions being asked over Russia's influence as well, considering the fact that Assad clung to power owing to Moscow's intervention in 2015. The stunning rebel offensive has threatened to eliminate Moscow's foothold in the region. At this moment, there appears to be an uneasy calm in Syria. The question hanging like a Damocles sword is, how long will this last? With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Okay, as things continue to remain fluid and very volatile in Syria, the United States has struck dozens of ISIS targets inside Syria, just hours after rebels seized the capital Damascus and forced President Assad to flee to Russia after the 13-year-long civil war. Now, Joe Biden, US President, said Washington is clear-eyed that the Islamic State extremist group, often called ISIS, will try to take advantage of any vacuum to re-establish itself in Syria, adding that they will not let that happen. Biden also said the fall of the Assad regime was a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria. The US maintains a force of around 900 troops in southeast Syria to fight the Islamic State fighters. Remains to be seen whether Syria will further descend into more chaos as rebel forces fight amongst each other, or whether there could be any possibility of peace and stability. Okay, staying with this region, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has, in fact, is set to be on a 3-day visit to this region. He's met UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed bin Sultan in Abu Dhabi today, and the visit is part of a visit to the Gulf over several days and marks his first trip to the region since becoming the Prime Minister in the summer this year. Keir Starmer is expected to discuss strengthening of defence and economic ties, but most importantly, this visit is timed at a crucial juncture for the geopolitical dimensions of this entire region. Now, what happens to NATO? Remember, Russia has been weakened significantly. Will NATO be strengthened here? What is the role that NATO will play, given that Turkey is set to be further emboldened in its one-upmanship game with Iran? That, I think, is going to be extremely important. And the UK Prime Minister's visit is very well timed. And hours ahead of his meet with UAE's President, Starmer welcomed the end of Assad's rule as he called for peace and the protection of civilians. Listen in.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward, and it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. But very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
Okay, Starmer is also set to travel to Saudi Arabia later on Monday for discussions with the Crown Prince. And Starmer and the Emir of Qatar have agreed on a long-term green energy partnership pledged to deepen defence and security ties and discuss the importance of regional stability as well. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side and talk more, including Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's three-day visit to Russia at a time of such geopolitical movements. On that story, more after this break. Stay with us. Back. We're watching India Global. We now turn our attention to the other big story on the show, which is Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's three-day visit to Russia. Singh has arrived in Moscow. In fact, he did so Sunday night. The visit comes as New Delhi and Moscow are set to finalize a landmark $4 billion defence deal aimed at acquiring an advanced long-range early warning radar system that will strengthen the nation's missile detection and air defence capabilities. To understand this, the significance of this visit, the fact that it's timed at a moment when there is so much of geopolitical flux happening in Syria and the entire region, let's get in my colleague Vishnu Shom to tell us more about the visit, its significance, and what all could be the takeaways for India. Go ahead, Vishnu, explain this to us, decode it for us.
Well, the big significance today was the commissioning of Tushil. It's now INS Tushil. It's a new frigate, one of two, which is India placed on order with Russia. This is of the Krivak 3 class, which is a fairly advanced warship. India already operates 6 of this class, all built in Russia. 2 have been ordered from Russia, and 2 more of this class have now been ordered and for manufacture in India as well. I believe they'll be manufactured at Goa shipyards. But this is a major addition to the Indian Navy. Now, what is interesting, and think about this, Gaurie, is that the primary engine, the gas turbine of these frigates is from Ukraine. You heard that right. They're Ukrainian engines on a Russian warship built for the Indian Navy. Now, a large majority of India's naval fleet, I'm talking about frigates and destroyers, do use Ukrainian gas turbines from a company called Zarya Mashkoprekt. But in this particular situation, with the war having commenced, India had to physically procure these engines from Ukraine and have them delivered to Russia before they could be installed on this warship. So it's been delayed, but eventually you are getting the first warship. You will get the second warship as well. But there you have it. Look at the role of India. Indian electronics and Indian missiles on a Russian warship made in Russia with a Ukrainian engine as its primary means of propulsion. So that sort of reflects how India is coming at it from various angles.
Indeed. And in terms of how it sort of improves and really strengthens our defense capabilities, if you could tell our viewers the significance of INS Tushil.
This particular acquisition is very important because remember, India's primary concern in the Indian Ocean region is the growing presence of the Chinese Navy. The Chinese Navy is growing faster than any other navy in the world. According to some reports, it's already larger than the US Navy. And it's not just the quantity, which is significant, but the quality of the warships being inducted, which is very important as well. Now, India, it has to be said, is nowhere in the game as far as numbers are concerned, but there has been an impetus in the quality of warships which India is now inducting. So there is a state-of-the-art Indian frigate, the INS Nilgiri, which in the next couple of weeks will be commissioned in Mumbai. There is this warship which has been commissioned in Russia as well. The acquisition of each platform is very important. There has been an uptick in the acquisition of warships for the Indian Navy. There's a gigantic order for submarines, which is also expected, but that's taken almost 10 years. We've not seen the light of day, and it's still to be signed. And then, of course, there's the entire nuclear side of things, where we've got at least 3 ballistic missile submarines with advanced missile tests now being conducted. So the Indian Navy is in a period of huge growth. Unfortunately for India, it pales in significance to the volume of the growth that we've seen with the Chinese Navy.
Indeed. And before I let you go, Vishnu, the fact is this visit, of course, planned months in advance, but one can't miss the timing. Happening at a time when Assad and his family have taken asylum or set to take asylum in Russia, in the entire region, in that entire Syrian developments. Russia has really taken a backseat there, and it impacts its presence. Do you think that's likely to come up in the negotiations or talks between India and Russia? Any reference to that?
No, I don't think that would likely come up. This is a very new development. It is unfolding. Minister Rajnath Singh's visit entirely on the acquisition, the commissioning of this warship, the acquisition of new weapon systems, negotiations to ensure whether the barter system or the cash system between India and the and Russia for the payment of Russian weaponry does work out, because remember, because of sanctions, payments cannot be made directly. There's a way around it. It's not very easy to do. I think those are the primary issues that India and Russia would be looking at.
All right, Vishnu Shomba, appreciate you taking out the time to speak to us on India Global. Shifting focus now to a story coming in from Canada, where a 20-year-old Indian origin man working as a security guard was shot dead by a gang in Canada's Edmonton area. In fact, the police have arrested 2 individuals and charged them with first-degree murder of the Indian origin man, Harshandeep Singh. And the CCTV footage that is available, it shows that the murder took place on Friday. As per the police, it happened at around 12:30 in the night, and they responded to a report of a gunshot inside an apartment building. When they reached 107 Avenue, they found that an unresponsive body in a stairwell and immediately performed first aid. Mr. Singh was taken to the hospital, where he was declared dead. This is the second death case of an Indian origin in Canada in the last 1 week. News coming in from China, and extremely important news. China's State Administration for Market Regulation, or SAMR, has introduced that it has opened an investigation into Nvidia Corporation's business practices. This over the company's alleged violations of that country's anti-monopoly regulations. The probe comes amidst the supposed violations Nvidia could have committed while acquiring computer parts supplier Mellanox Technologies. The chipmaker purchased Mellanox in 2020 with approval from the respective antitrust agencies from China, the EU and the US. All right, with that, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side with an important interview and lots more. Stay with us. The last 48 hours, there have been unprecedented developments in Syria, something that's said to impact the entire region, Middle East, and of course the world at large as well. To understand the dynamics, how it could reshape some of the global world order and how it could reshape political developments around the world, I have with me the ambassador of Israel to India, Mr. Reuven Azar, speaking on what could be the next steps for the region, for Israel, and how significant it could be to reshape that entire area. Thank you so much, Excellency, for taking out the time speaking to NDTV.
For the interview.
My first question to you, as we talk about the unprecedented developments in Syria, is that, of course, Israel is not a stakeholder in what all happened, but it gets impacted because it's an important development that has taken place. Talk to us about how Israel is seeing how these changes have taken place in Syria and how they're set to reshape that entire region.
Well, Israel is no doubt in a situation of alert. We are following very closely the events in Syria. The Israel Defense Forces have taken defensive positions in the buffer zone, in the border between Israel and Syria. As you probably know, there is a disengagement zone that was created in 1974 following the Yom Kippur War. That zone is a buffer zone of several hundred meters to a few kilometers in the north. In the past, that area was attacked by different groups. It has been attacked now too. The UN forces there, the observers that belong to an organization called UNDOF, have been attacked. Israel has come to their rescue. So we are taking these temporary defensive positions in the buffer zone and following very closely what's going on the other side, preparing to defend ourselves against any possible attack or development.
There is this sense that I see, and several leaders are also talking about it, that Israel has sort of preempted some of what as developments are happening, or some are saying that Israel is trying to take advantage of a very volatile situation. Explain to us that is this A, temporary, B, from a security point of view, why was it necessary?
Well, as you know, Israel was attacked on the 7th of October, and that decision to attack Israel, I think, was a decision that not only caused huge damage to Israel, and we had to defend ourselves, but it also had it had an effect in the region, because from the moment that Hezbollah decided to involve itself in the conflict and attacking Israel from the north, it was just a matter of time until Israel would have to take the necessary steps to defend ourselves. So I think that Iran and Hezbollah made a huge miscalculation. They didn't understand what are going to be the consequences of their attack against Israel. Hezbollah has been hit very hard. Nasrallah, as you remember, was taken out, with many thousands of Hezbollah terrorists. Iran attacked Israel directly, and as you know, Israel defended itself and attacked Iran back. So when you look at the picture, you see that these tentacles of the Iranian regime have been cut.
But in that, the
Hamas,
reason,
Hezbollah, and now forces in the region that have been following that and seeing the debilitation of the Iran axis took advantage of it. And that's how you see the change in Syria. Israel is not involved in the Syrian conflict. We are not intending to involve ourselves in Syrian politics. And that's a matter that the Syrian people will have to sort out itself.
But the fact that the Israeli forces entered the buffer zone, I was asking about that is it temporary? What was the rationale for it? Because that is something that a lot of people are asking, that was it needed at this moment?
Right. It is temporary, and it was needed because, as you remember, and maybe your audience doesn't remember, that back in 2010, when the civil war in Syria started, we had a situation in which ISIS-related groups and other groups entered into the buffer zone and used that buffer zone in order to entrench themselves, fight against the Assad regime, and also, from time to time, attack Israel. So we had to take care of that. Okay? It took us a lot of effort to clean the buffer zone from these elements that were using the border with Israel as a shield from the bombardments of the Assad regime towards them. And some of these missiles fell in Israeli territory. So now we had to make sure that this buffer zone is not utilized again as an entrenchment for rogue terrorist elements.
Do you anticipate that, given the fact that though yes, there's been a regime change, Assad government has fallen, but those who are now set to take power are also offshoots of Al-Qaeda. They also have extreme Islamist ideology. They may have disowned some of the Al-Qaeda thought, but are unlikely to be completely of a different thought process there. Do you anticipate rogue elements?
You are right that there are many rogue elements in the Middle East. There are many radicals. Some of them are Shiite radicals. Some of them are Sunni radicals. In Syria as well. So we are learning from the past. We saw in the past that we were attacked by such rogue elements. We don't want that to repeat itself. We don't know what is going to happen in Syria, who is going to take control, how long this is going to take until they take effective control, what will be their approach towards Israel.
Yes.
So naturally, we are in a defensive position without interfering in Syrian politics, but alert to the scenario that we will be attacked.
Fine. That is a defense and a national security point of view. Israel is not involved in the Syrian politics. It is, of course, going to be impacted like the other people as well in the region. But what about Iran? The developments in Syria are having or set to have a major impact on Iran as well. That impacts Israel directly, doesn't it?
Well, as I said, Iran did a huge miscalculation. It is now exposed, not only by the fact that their tentacles, 3 of them, were cut now, okay, but also by the fact that we have proven that they are not immune, that if they attack Israel, they will be attacked. So in our counterattack, we removed their air defenses, we hit their missile and drone factories, and we even hit an element of their nuclear program. So if they decide to continue the escalation against Israel, of course Israel will remain the right to defend itself.
Do you think that this will weaken Hezbollah significantly because Iran may not be able to rearm Hezbollah that much, and that will have a direct impact on Israel's security and strategic calculations?
Yeah, look, there are different geopolitical changes that are going to happen as a result of what we did to remove Hamas and Hezbollah and what is going now in Syria. We don't know yet all the implications, but you can see very clearly at this point that, first of all, these tentacles are removed. Second, that apparently, I don't know yet whether it's final or not, the Russian military presence in Syria is going to come to an end, and that changes the state of play in the Eastern Mediterranean when it comes to the balance between Russia and NATO. Okay, and the third thing is that Turkey and to a certain extent Qatar, that are supporting these rebels, are going to feel encouraged to try to shape the future of Syria, maybe other Arab states, we don't know yet. So we have to contemplate that. Israel is present in the region. I think Israel made it very clear that we will not agree to be attacked by anybody, and those who decided to attack us have paid a huge price. So this is going to influence also not only what is happening in Syria, but what is the power play in Lebanon as well. We don't know how. At this point, as you know, we are positioned on the other side, on the Lebanese side, on the border. We are trying to implement the ceasefire that we have with the government of Lebanon. We are not going to allow Hezbollah to go back to the border with Israel. So there as well, we're taking positions, waiting to see what is going to happen. But I think that by now, it is very clear to different players in the region, including these terrorist organizations, that Israel is very resolute to defend itself. And I hope that they don't decide to attack.
Several questions come in from that, and I'm going to take them one by one. But first, the reason why I asked Iran is the fact that Beirut to Damascus has been a very important corridor for Iran in the past as well, and that has been important for Hezbollah as well. Do you see that corridor now being closed for Iran, and that having a larger implication for Hezbollah and also for Lebanon people as well? Lebanese people stand to get impacted as well. Do you think that is now going to be the largest and the most obvious takeaway from Iranian ability or lack of ability to help Hezbollah?
It seems that in the immediate future, this corridor was taken out. I don't know what will be the future relations between the Syrian government and the Iranian government. It's too early to say. It seems that there is a conflict in the region between Sunni and Shiite radical forces.
Yes.
And Israel has been subject to attack by both in the past. So it's not that, we wish that we would see a situation in Syria that we have peace. Our Prime Minister has gone out with a very clear statement that we are sending a message of peace both to the Kurds, to the Druze, to the Christians and the Muslims in Syria, and we wish to have peaceful relations with Syria.
Yes.
The question is, what will be the approach of the new government as when it shapes up?
And also, this is likely to be a Sunni government, and Iranians, of course, are Shia majority, and that could, of course, create more regional, I wouldn't say conflict, maybe tensions that remain to be seen how they pan out. But let me then ask you about the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. There have been violations, but there's also hope that some of it could pan out. Do you think now, is Israel now more optimistic that the ceasefire chances of it being totally fulfilled by Lebanon are higher, given the fact that Hezbollah may not be rearmed that much by Iran, at least in the immediate weeks?
We are very cautious here. We think that the Lebanese government is not moving fast enough. We have seen attempts by Hezbollah operatives to go south to the Litani, to move weapons from place to place. Each time that we saw things like that, we took immediate action.
Yes.
This is a responsibility of the Lebanese government, and Israel will not rest until the terms of this ceasefire are completely implemented.
Yes.
And that means that if the Lebanese government won't act against Hezbollah south of the Litani, Israel will be obliged to do so. Mm-hmm. And this is very clearly stated also in the side letter that we got from the Americans. We have a right to defend ourselves. We won't allow a situation in which Hezbollah comes back to our border.
Yes.
And we won't allow Hezbollah to fire at northern Israel. If you remember, the aim that the cabinet has clearly defined is that we must allow our citizens, the citizens that were uprooted from the border area villages, about 60,000 of them, to return safely to their homes. Mm. If they feel that this ceasefire is not perpetuated, they won't go back. So
yes.
We need to stabilize the region. It's either done by the Lebanese government, or it will have to be done by Israel.
Are you now, or is Israel now more hopeful that ceasefire violations by Hezbollah will be less, given the complexities right now?
Well, yeah, it's clear that Hezbollah has been debilitated, and in this situation, we'll have to recalibrate how brazen it wants to be when it comes to provocations against Israel. We certainly hope that the new situation will be more favorable to stability. And that's what we are thriving for.
There are some reports, or there are some analysts who expect that given the very dramatic changes that have taken place from Iran's political point of view as well in the region, and the power imbalance that has suddenly taken place for it, it may probably now pursue the nuclear program with a new zeal to be able to arrest some of the power imbalance that has taken place in the last 48 hours against it. How does Israel respond to that?
Well, as you probably know, the Prime Minister of Israel has declared very clearly that Israel will not allow Iran to arm itself with a nuclear weapon. And we are resolute to follow that decision. We have the tools of doing that, if you have seen in the past. We have shown that Iran is vulnerable and is exposed. So I think that it's about time that the Iranian regime understands that they should change their approach towards Israel. And if they pursue such a path, it will be very dangerous for the regime.
And the reason why I asked you this is because there is a power vacuum in Syria, and there is also a regional competition between Turkey and Iran. So in the backdrop of that, these changes that have taken place in the geopolitical scenario in the last couple of days are going to have major impact, and they will decide decision making, both for Turkey, both for Iran and several other players. In your assessment, where do you see this power vacuum leading up to over the course of next couple of weeks, couple of months? Because longer than that, I think it's impossible to predict right now.
Well, we have a saying in Jewish tradition that prophecy, since the end of the era of prophecy is only given to the fools. So I'm not going to be prophetic. I don't know what will happen in Syria. I don't know what will be the next moves of Turkey or Iran.
But there must have been some internal assessments, right?
Well, there are people that are trying to assess the situation. At the end of the day, in such a degree of volatility, you cannot know what will happen. I think that the fact that Turkey is a NATO member,
yes,
although not always it has been behaving like a NATO member, but the fact that it's a NATO member I think it works in favor of NATO. I think that the fact that Iran is no longer present in the scope it was present in Syria or in Lebanon is something that is favorable for Israel. But again, we have to be alert. We don't know what will be the attitude of the forces that are taking over in Syria. We wish for peace. We want to stabilize the region. And we hope that the Syrian people will concentrate in rebuilding their country instead of using violence against Israel.
Last two questions I want to ask you. One is that will this now lead to a push towards getting the war over? There is, of course, Hezbollah. With Hezbollah, there is a ceasefire, but with Hamas, the war continues. Do you think these changed conditions will be ripe for ending the war with Hamas as well? Do you see that?
We certainly hope so. We think that there is pressure being put on Hamas. The fact that their main patron, Iran, has received those blows, I think, might get them to rethink their position. We are not going to compromise on getting back all our hostages, and we are not going to allow Hamas to rearm and regroup in the Gaza Strip. So it's a tough situation, because what Hamas wants from us is to use the hostages card in order to create a situation in which they can gain back control over the entire Gaza Strip, rearm, regroup, and attack Israel. We won't allow that. So we have to be patient. We have to work with our allies and friends. We have to continue putting pressure on Hamas until they are no longer the leading force in the Gaza Strip and until they completely release all our hostages.
In 14 months of the war, this is probably the time when Iran and some of its proxy network is at its weakest. So one would say this is probably the best time to evaluate the prospects of ending that war. Is that a conversation that's happening internally right now in Israel?
Well, what we have seen in the last few days is that the Prime Minister has met with the families of the hostages yesterday and actually has said that, the time is ripe for a hostage deal. So we certainly hope to see developments in the future. I don't know what will happen with the continuation of hostilities, with the sporadic efforts of the Hamas terrorist organization to continue, their attack against our forces. This is an ongoing effort. I don't know when this will end, but it seems that the conditions have improved when it comes to the prospects of having a hostage deal sooner than later.
Final question, sir. It's 6 weeks before President-elect Donald Trump comes into power, and he's been very vocal about the fact that he wants to end this war. He's hopeful that it'll end on day one. Conditions, if they are as they continue till then, in your assessment, where do you see the war ending in terms? I know the conditions are known. You've highlighted them right now as well. But with the change of guard in US happening, and so how do you see that impacting the war?
Well, first of all, I think that if the ceasefire in the north holds, that means that 90% of the stability we need to maintain our economy, to open up, the skies of Israel, to go back to normal life, are there. What is still left, once we have neutralized the Hamas military threat, the missile threat, and their infrastructure, the only thing that is left is to bring back the hostages and make sure that Hamas doesn't rearm and regroup. From the point of view of the Israeli economy, things are back on track. The Israeli economy is very robust. Tourism is coming back. So I think it's not dependent on an official ceasefire with Hamas. And struggling in the Gaza Strip is not going to be over until a horizon for Gaza is created that is conducive with the hopes of both of Israel and the Palestinian people.
Right.
Because what they have been suffering in the last 17 years of Hamas rule is terrible, and that has to change. So when are we going to see the conditions in which we can develop a plan together with our partners for the Palestinians to assume a more moderate leadership and actually start reconstructing Gaza? We don't have answers for that yet.
But the power dynamics have changed right now.
Absolutely.
Some of those who are very strong are not so strong right now in the last couple of days. And do you think that makes the conditions right? Because it's not just about US, it's also about the region and some of the regional leaders.
Look, I think no doubt it improved the prospects. And there is something very clear that we can see right now, that if you attempt to destroy Israel, you will be destroyed. And this is a very important message that is sent by the developments that we see in the region.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to NDTV. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.